you interested in the political, social, and economic issues around Sierra Leone?
Do you want to know about burning issues in the country?
Well, Moment is the program for you.
Moment is an hour program that provides analysis on political, social, and economic issues in Sierra Leone.
The program shall be a live broadcast in a studio, Star Television, with an anchor and guests from around the country.
Good afternoon and welcome to the program Moment, broadcast on Star Television. If you're watching the program today, you can see from the background that we're not in the Star Studios. Today, Moment has come all the way to Gloucester Street, next to Cathedral Church, where we have the Anti-Corruption Commission. And for the very first time, he's giving this exclusive interview to Moment. I guess you know who I'm talking about already. I'm talking about the newly appointed Anti-Corruption Commission boss, Francis Ben Kaifala. Very young as he is, I think if I'm not mistaken, he's the most youngest anti-corruption boss that the ACC has seen. Welcome to the program, Francis Ben Kaifala.
Thank you very much, sir, and I'm honored to be on your program.
It's so good to have you because all eyes are on you today in Sierra Leone. Why?
Well, I guess because of the kind of position that I occupy now, the Anti-Corruption Commission is really at the center of the governance regime in the country, and for a young person to occupy that position, it draws its own attention. And also, there's a lot of expectations from the people who have known me over the years, the things I have stood for, what I have been saying, what I have been doing. And there are people who are eager to see that I succeed. And there are also those who want to see what really I will bring to this office that is different from what used to be. So all those interests are colliding, and that is why all eyes are on me.
That sounds good. But let me just go into a little bit about yourself, your past life. When you were going to school, did you think that you wanted to become a judge, a lawyer at that time?
Yes, since I was a boy, the only profession really I admired was to be a lawyer. And I recall when I was going to school and we acted a play from a book called The Incorruptible Judge. And the judge, the lawyers in that book, I mean, people in those days really used to read that book a lot. I don't hear much about it these days, but that book really inspired me. And we had drama programs where we used to act parts of the book, and I used to act the character of a lawyer. And it inspired me a lot to want to become a lawyer. So this is really what I wanted to become.
And you're so satisfied now?
Yeah, I feel satisfied, yes.
Let's come back to your job again. When you were appointed the ACC boss, how did you receive that news?
Well, it was a process. It was a process that started before the appointment. Of course, there were consultations. I was informed that the president, in his wisdom, wanted me to serve in that capacity. And it was really a thrilling news. I looked forward to being able to perform for the first time in public office. And I was very happy and appreciative of the fact that the president wanted me to serve in this capacity after taking up office. And this happened just after I finished my second master's degree in the United States of America. So I came back to Sierra Leone, and already the process was ongoing for me to occupy this office, which culminated into the announcement that was made that I am the new anti-corruption commissioner. So it was a thrilling experience. I shared it with my family. We discussed it, and people were already calling for it, and it was really an interesting experience. And what really came with the experience was I was able to assess the degree of confidence that people had in me. People really wanted me to occupy this office, and they thought that I would be the best person at this time to occupy it. So it was a thrilling experience.
So what was the initial reaction of your wife when you told her the news that you've been appointed as head of the Anti-Corruption Commission in Sierra Leone?
She's a very private person. She doesn't like the public attention and all these things. So it was mixed. She was happy that I was going to occupy a high office, that my hard work over the years could culminate into such a recognition and appointment. But she was again worried about the attention that could bring into our lives and the privacy that could be affected by it. So it was mixed, but generally we were all happy about it.
Is your privacy, or the privacy between you and your wife, is it being affected by your job now?
Well, a lot of people, of course, visit. But yes, that was really when the appointment was initially made. People are happy and people come by to wish you well, and a lot of people coming in. But our privacy is generally well respected as we speak. So there's no problem at all. There's no problem.
Francis Ben Kaifala is my guest on the program today, and is the Anti-Corruption Commission boss out here in Sierra Leone. Joyce just appointed less than 3 months ago, and is facing, I would say, Herculean task, daunting task. So tell me, when you came to the office of the Anti-Corruption, what did you find? What was waiting for you at the desk?
Well, I took over at a time when I already had the impression, because I had been studying the fight against corruption for a long time. First of all, our rankings in the international indices in respect of the fight against corruption were not very favorable. The perception of the public in respect of the fight against corruption was not very favorable. The staff at the ACC were somehow demotivated in the fight against corruption, which was probably arising from the way the leadership dealt with them and how they were generally treated in the fight against corruption. So I came at a time when everything was basically very low. And my first plan was to try to reposition the commission, to share in my vision that the fight against corruption has to be more serious than has ever been before, and for them to join into the fight as people who are committed to serve Sierra Leone. So I engaged them, discuss issues of their welfare, trying to understand them, work with them to solve some of them, and in a quick time, 1 week, 2 weeks, some of them were already addressed. And the way I interacted with them, the open door policy I operated with them, the way I blended with them so fast, everybody's spirits were lighting, and then they joined in. And then we were able to put in place measures to really start addressing how we can take on the fight against corruption. The investigations department was rejuvenated and re-energized, and they immediately started working very hard to see that investigations take place. The prosecutions were done. I mean, I had meetings with all of them, really made them to understand my vision and plans and how they could join in for us all to work together. And we succeeded, we are succeeding in doing that, and a lot is happening in the commission, as you know. And I was also able to try to also manage the perception of the public to believe that this is not business as usual. I am coming in with a fresh energy, and that energy is really to try to make the fight against corruption more robust, more serious, and more sincere. And then we repositioned ourselves both internally and externally, and then we started taking on the fight against corruption afresh.
You started taking the fight against corruption. To what extent the corruption will really cripple this country's economy?
You see, I don't think we have really taken our time to study and understand the level of decadence, corruption, and corrupt practices that exist in Sierra Leone. When we look at the indices across the world, it is easy for us to say that people just don't want to give Sierra Leone a bad name. But corruption is very costly to Sierra Leone. The cost is high. Those businessmen who want to invest in Sierra Leone, who do not do so because they believe the country is corrupt, and they do not do so because they wish to do so because Transparency International says we are 130 out of 180 corrupt countries in the world. In 2013, we were rated the most corrupt country in the world. Those decisions not to invest in Sierra Leone, institutions of the world, World Bank, DFID, governments across the world, Germans, British, who decide that we think this is a leaking bucket to pour water into. So we are not pouring our resources into this country. We are not giving the government the resources to be able to invest in energy, water supply, healthcare, and all these things because the country is corrupt. That cost to Sierra Leone is very high. The reputational cost is very high. And you have to also balance that with our own revenue that is generated, that is allocated to our own people, to provide services and resources for our people to better their lives, which individuals decide to divert for their own purposes or apply it to interests that benefits them, their friends, or other people other than those who are the intended beneficiaries. These are serious endemic problems. These are high costs to Sierra Leone, and it is everywhere. If you follow the news and you see the investigations that we have now started, the ones that have been started for some reasons could not be carried on, but we have come and opened them, you will see how widespread it is. Within the last 2 weeks alone, we have arrested over 25 people, top public officials, Ministry of Youth, NACID, Ministry of Social Welfare, the educational system, everywhere you look. Yesterday we had to arrest the former Director General of the National Revenue Authority and the Director of Finance of the National Revenue Authority. And there are a lot more on the radar. Look at the GTTR report that was recently released by the transitional team that was set up by the President to look into corruption. You will see that corruption has been accepted as a normal. And in a society where that which is abnormal becomes normal, it is a serious problem to deal with. Because even you who try to fight it will be seen as a problem. So corruption is really costly to us, and we have to understand this. We have to accept this. What gives me a lot of hope is that the President was as bold to declare that corruption is a national security issue, and therefore he had to declare war on it. And I was very pleased that the very President chose no other person to lead that fight but myself. If not for anything, I intend to take that fight very seriously and see how we can try to change the story of Sierra Leone, how we can reposition Sierra Leone, how we can launder the image of Sierra Leone to reduce the reputational cost that corruption brings to us.
What percentage would you put the reputational cost at?
It's very high. I would say that for now, I mean, before we had the issue of the war as one of the reputational problems that we had for business and investment, or generally for Sierra Leone. When you talk about Sierra Leone, it's the rebel war, the cutting plans. But that is no longer the case. The real thing that is costing us now is corruption. So if you ask me percentage, I would say 80%. It's very high.
This is not good at all for a nation.
Oh yes. I think to say it is not good is an understatement. I think it is abysmally bad.
The program is coming to you from the Anti-Corruption Commission office out here at George and Gloucester Street in Freetown. We're talking about corruption in Sierra Leone. He's got the mandate to see how best he can fight corruption, maybe take it to the backyard again and remove it from the front yard. And this is what we're talking about. There's something I just want to ask you, because I've had people talking about it in different quarters. They say, when you look at Sierra Leone today, it is the people who have grown and not the state. Any comments on that?
Well, yes. We obtained our independence in 1961. That is about 56 years ago. Precisely 57 years. And we are still, in terms of institutional development, in terms of our wealth, in terms of our human capacity development, in terms of our educational level, in terms of general and social welfare, and many other things, even governance. We have not really gotten our act right. So we are on the brink of becoming a failed state. We cannot even manage our own resources. We are among countries that could be classed in terms of resources and population to be among the wealthiest countries in the world. But that is only in terms of what our potentials are. But what we have achieved is not that. So when you look at it and you see that in a population of this nature, it is the elite who are benefiting. The political class, for example, are extremely wealthy. The businessmen, some of them are extremely wealthy. You will see that the population, the imbalance that exists between the very wealthy and the very poor is extremely high. So I would agree with you that the state has really not grown for 57 years, and we have to do something about it. And to do something about it requires a critical mass of people who believe in the vision that countries like this can change. Other countries have done it before. Singapore, Malaysia, these are countries who got independence almost around the same time as we did. Even in Africa, other countries are beacons of hope. Rwanda, after the bloody war they went through, today are attracting the world population. Cape Verde is an example of a country that has transformed itself, relying mostly on tourism and fishing. Botswana is another country which is doing extremely well. Ghana is an example of institutional reform and patriotism. And these were not done by magic. It is people who were willing to sacrifice. People who decided that we have to change our own story, and they acted on that to bring about change in their countries. I think it is not too late for Sierra Leone to do so, and we have to start now. Because we cannot continue to be the country that is a blot on the conscience of the world. We cannot make ourselves the laughter of other countries of the world. We cannot continue begging. When people know we are diamond rich, we have bauxite, we have gold. Our human resources is one of the best in the world. We have people who are educated in the best universities of the world. Why should we be lying at the bottom of the human development index? These are genuine questions we should ask ourselves now, and we should work towards trying to change this. Thankfully, the people themselves have become more conscious, and that is why we had a change of government very recently. And I believe the new government realizes that it cannot be business as usual, and we are all trying to put ourselves on a trajectory of change. And that change will not only be for individuals but for countries as well.
There's talk now about you coming in the government, it's a collective effort. We're going to be seeing a commission of inquiry set up in this country to try people wanting.
Yes, I know that the government is working on setting up the commission of inquiry. I am involved in some of the deliberations and discussions, and it is basically, you see, we in the ACC have a mandate by law, but a commission of inquiry combines not just law but also the social context to understand really what are the underlying problems. It is not a court kind of situation. It's really to understand the problems and to make appropriate recommendations where necessary so that we can change. That system, working side by side with what we are doing in the ACC, which is really hard to go after those who are corrupt and try to make sure that either we recover what they take away from the governance system or to have them punished otherwise. It creates a system of balance for us to be able to conscientiously look at the issues at hand and to deal with them collectively. Combining the political sphere, which the Commission of Inquiry itself represents, and the legal sphere, which institutions like the judiciary and the ACC represent. So the Commission of Inquiry is a good idea because it is not everything the ACC can go after. Some have to be taken care of by other people in a more relaxed environment where people are not tense, but they understand that it's also a serious business.
What is the status of the Hajj Gate? Because I understand that you invited some of the people who were involved to the ACC. So what is going on now with that?
The Hajj, as you are aware, my predecessor, Commissioner, had already filed the indictment for the Hajj Gate. When I came in, all I did was to try to look at it, review it, to see what we can do, because investigations were ongoing at the time it was filed. So I had to factor in the fresh evidence that we had. So all concerned were brought in, from the Vice President to the former Minister of Mines and an employee of the Ministry of Social Welfare. They were all put on bail. The indictment has been revised. We tried to look at what happened in the light of the ACC Act, and one or two other charges have been added. The case was supposed to come up on the 30th of July, but it now comes up on the 20th of August. So it is on course.
So it's on course?
Yes.
Nothing to worry about?
Nothing to worry about. Those who have anything to answer will have an opportunity to answer, and the court will decide, let justice prevail. Muslims form 70% of the population of this country. I think what happened to them was a very painful experience. Some answers have to be brought to them, and we are trying to do our best to make sure that the answers are obtained fairly before the judicial system of this country. So the indictment is going forward. It is already redrafted. We are only waiting to serve so that on the 20th of July it can come up in court.
So what do you make of people who are going about talking or saying things like the whole exercise, ACC, Commission of Inquiry, this is all a witch hunt?
You see, people have a way of trying to demonize things that are genuine efforts at trying to straighten society, either because their interests are in jeopardy or people they care about are in jeopardy. But you see, we at the ACC, or I as the Commissioner, I do not wake up in the morning and take a decision that I want to investigate anybody because of politics. We look at the evidence that come to us by way of information or otherwise. Once we have the evidence, we take our time to scrutinize it to determine whether there is some degree of culpability upon which to proceed against people for corruption and corrupt practices. And when we do that, we don't look at the name of the person involved, We don't look at the political orientation of the person involved. We don't care about the religion of the person involved. We don't really care about where the person comes from. The question is this evidence sufficient to commence an investigation by the ACC? Similarly, I believe when the GTTR was being done, it was done because we knew how corruption was endemic. A new government was not just going to come and say, let bygones be bygone, let impunity prevail, let's move on. These are efforts that are meant to go to the bottom of some of the problems that have plagued Sierra Leone for years. For us to put ourselves on a different trajectory, to see how we can really be a better country. So if somebody says that it is a witch hunt or it is a ploy to go after people who belong to other political parties, I think it's a sad state of affairs. It's an unfortunate comment to make. Let the truth be told. Since I was a boy, I was always told that the truth shall set you free. I have never believed otherwise. And I think that it is important that we put ourselves on a path of change, of progress and development, and that begins by we not allowing impunity to prevail.
Francis Ben Kaifala, my guest on the program, the Anti-Corruption Commission boss out here in Freetown, Sierra Leone. We're talking about his maybe 200-300 days now in office, is it?
Yes, it's just about 2 months. No, it's actually not up to 2 months yet.
2 months. Okay, less than 2 months.
Yes.
But we're looking at the way he has planned to navigate Sierra Leone through. So at least if we don't get corruption free, we might have something decent in society. This is your thinking?
Yes, my thinking is to see how working with the president's vision for Sierra Leone contained in his new direction, to see how we can reposition Sierra Leone for progress, for change, for development. And in doing so, the plan is to have a manageable system of corruption control. You see, it is overambitious for anybody to say you can eradicate corruption. But corruption can be controlled through good plans, through making the people believe in the fight against corruption and coming along with it. Through setting examples, making sure there are no sacred cows. Through how people who engage in corruption are dealt with, so that others can understand that impunity cannot be tolerated when it comes to the resources of the people. So my plan is to work with everybody, all stakeholders in the fight against corruption, believing that the political will is firmly behind me, as expressed by His Excellency the President, and for us to see how this time can be different. I intend to take this seriously, and I intend to do it well. And I intend to do it relying on the hard-working men and women who work day in and day out in the ACC, and with the support of the government, which put faith in me to serve as commissioner, and above all, with the people of Sierra Leone in this fight.
Mr. Francis Ben Kaifala, I don't know whether you have seen this or has come to your notice. We see a lot of people around town. They are driving very, very expensive cars in Sierra Leone. And you know that very well. If you are in Europe or you find yourself in America, the police are going to do a profiling on you. But in Sierra Leone, nothing happens. Is this something you would like to bring on board as you fight corruption?
Well, we have a mandate to investigate and prosecute unexplained wealth for public officers. So it will not be just anybody who drives expensive cars or who lives an expensive way of life. We are limited in our mandate to public officers. So as far as public officers are concerned, if you live in a way that is above your normal income, the law places the duty on you to explain how. So that is why one of the drives that I am going to make sure I take seriously, working with the people, my people at the ACC, from the Deputy Commissioner to the rest of the team at the ACC, is for us to put some life into asset declaration. Both entry asset declarations and exit asset declaration. That will help inform us whether a public officer is living beyond his means. That will tell us what other means the public officer has to sustain his way of life. And for those who cannot explain, I know that nobody has been charged with unexplained wealth before, but I am going to make sure it is one of the charges I am going to bring during my time, because it addresses issues like this, as you are saying. The rest really can be handled by other stakeholders in the security sector, like the police and the Office of National Security, when it comes generally to the population. But my mandate is limited to public officers and I intend to keep it.
The program you're watching is Moment, broadcast on Star Television. And my guest on the program is the Anti-Corruption Commission boss, Francis Ben Kaifala. We're taking a break, and when we come back, the Moment continues.
Are you interested in the political, social, and economic issues around Sierra Leone?
Do you want to know about burning issues in the country?
Well, Moment is the program for you.
Moment is an hour program that provides analysis on political, social, and economic issues in Sierra Leone.
The program shall be a live broadcast in a studio, Star Television, with an anchor and guest from around the country.